And Ed's going to start.
Well, I hope we don't have an argument. I hope we have a discussion, which is, I think, what David said on his tweet yesterday. I've started to follow David Mitchell on Twitter. I've now officially become his stalker, and I was thinking, I said to David this morning that I'm beginning to think that the purpose of the BBC is to give David Mitchell employment. It's almost impossible now to turn on the television without seeing a quiz show in which he is either the participant or the host. But I think the reason that I've been invited is because people are concerned, perhaps suspicious of what the Conservative Party's attitude is to the BBC. So let me say what I said to an audience which included the former Doctor Who David Tennant, and was greeted with hoots of derision, but I'll carry on saying it, which is that we love the BBC. And we adore the BBC. The BBC is incredibly important. It's a fantastic organisation. It's the cornerstone of our broadcast media. It's probably the only global media company we have. It's certainly one of the most recognised, if not the most recognised brands around the world for Britain. It has a huge footprint, an enormous amount of trust, and it also helps our media overall in many other ways. And if you talk to any commercial operators before they start complaining about the BBC, to which I'll come on in a minute, they will admit that a great many of their executives and their programme makers and so on started their careers at the BBC. So we shouldn't lose sight of that, as it were, ancillary purpose, which one often forgets, that it's a great training ground for programme makers and people who go on to work in the commercial media. So if you'll indulge me, I'll just indulge in a slightly extended self-pitying whinge for the next 2 or 3 minutes, which is that I do feel that we've been slightly unfairly traduced in our views on the BBC, because one newspaper in particular, The Guardian, can't get over the fact that it's utterly convinced that Rupert Murdoch is running our media policy. So whenever we say anything about the BBC, this is immediately put into the prism that Rupert Murdoch must have been talking into my earpiece when I said it. So I'll give you some examples. For example, there was a big debate a couple of years ago about whether the licence fee should be top-sliced, which meant basically taking a bit of the licence fee and giving it to Channel 4 in order to save Channel 4. You might remember the former Chief Executive Andy Duncan was going around with the baking bowl saying Channel 4 was about to go bust, it desperately needed money, it should be top-sliced. We came out against top-slicing for a couple of reasons. First of all, because the BBC was very opposed to top-slicing, and we accepted their argument that it was the thin end of the wedge, and that if you accepted that a pot of money from the licence fee could go to Channel 4, then the next broadcasting or media problem, another bit of the licence fee would go to that another organisation that said it was in trouble. And also we took the view to, with Channel 4, be careful what you wish for. Nobody who has dealt with the BBC or seen how the BBC is treated by the media would necessarily wish the kind of resultant terrible bureaucracy and sort of tortuous positions the BBC has to take in order to placate its critics. So we felt that Channel 4 should be careful that it might fundamentally change its own culture if it took part of the licence fee. This was immediately depicted as signing up to the Murdoch agenda, because apparently Murdoch is against top-slicing the BBC, but there was nothing involved in that. Anyway, the other issue is that we've said that we want to change the way Ofcom, which is the media regulator, works. This again has been depicted as somehow conceding to Murdoch agenda. Not at all. What we do say is we think there's been a vacuum in government policy, that ministers haven't taken the lead and said what they want to see in terms of broadcasting policy. So Ofcom has filled that vacuum. We take a view, which might be unfashionable, that elected MPs and Parliament and ministers should be the ones that drive policy, and Ofcom should be the one that regulates policy. And finally, my final gaffe, which actually didn't involve Murdoch, just involved me being made to look like an idiot, was when I welcomed the BBC's strategy review. This was immediately taken as me calling for the closure of a station called Six Music, which I'd never listened to. Basically what happened there was, I thought, again, I was trying to be supportive of the BBC, which the BBC has taken on board, I thought, a lot of the criticisms from its competitors, who had said it was too big and should be aware of its impact on others. So when it announced its review, I thought the decent thing to do would be to say, well, we welcome this review. Well done, BBC, for recognising these concerns. This was immediately turned into MP calls for closure of Six Music, so I performed a handbrake turn worthy of Lewis Hamilton, listened to Six Music for a whole weekend and then told people how much I loved it. But the point is that you cannot have a conversation with anyone who doesn't work for the BBC but does work in the media without them complaining about the size of the BBC, and that includes The Guardian. When I went to the Guardian Media Group, they complained about the size of the BBC's website because it makes it hard for them to do business, to decide how to deal with convergence, if you like, the fact that everyone's moving onto the net, how to form a strategy when the BBC website is out there backed by a significant sum of money. So I think that it's our duty as politicians and policymakers to recognise not just the issues for the BBC itself, but the issues that face its competitors. And that doesn't just include Murdoch, it includes, as I say, all the national newspapers, it includes local newspapers, it includes rival broadcasters as well. All of them have their concerns, which is why I welcome the fact that the BBC was looking at the size of its website, looking at how it competed in the field of sport and in American programming. But it is an important point to make that the BBC is independent. It's entirely up to the BBC what it does in terms of which services it continues, which services it stops. We have put our head above the parapet on various occasions. We opposed the BBC going into local video because, again, we thought that would damage local newspapers. And all we want, the only two changes we want to make if we come into office are, first of all, to change the way the BBC is regulated. We opposed the BBC Trust because we felt there was a conflict of interest to have a body that was meant to regulate the BBC but was also meant to champion the BBC. The Labour government, which created the BBC Trust, has now agreed and said the BBC Trust should go just 3 years after they set it up, which nobody seems to have noticed this astonishing U-turn. And the second thing is transparency, which is simply to say that we should know. I think the licence fee payer is entitled to know how much the BBC costs, what it pays its executives and what it spends on its services. But I also think its competitors are entitled to know. The BBC will say, well, this is a matter of commercial confidentiality and commercial competition. I don't think it is. I think if you're getting the licence fee and a guaranteed income, it is perfectly legitimate if you're running a local radio station to know what the BBC is spending on their local radio station and then be able to put forward the argument, well, they're spending 10 times more than we are. Do you think this is fair competition? It may transpire at the end of that debate. People do think it's fair competition. It may transpire it's not. I think the difficulty for politicians, policymakers in kind of advancing that argument is that, broadly speaking, we as licence fee payers, as viewers, as listeners of the BBC simply think about the product, and if the product is good, then why on earth do you want to meddle with it or reduce it or somehow change it? Well, I take the view that we do need plurality in broadcasting and in our media, and it's important that we don't get a BBC that stifles competition and innovation and leaves room for others to breathe and to innovate. But I do think, just to duck out completely from the title of this debate, it's a very dangerous thing, and in fact it's written into the charter of the BBC, I think, for politicians to start giving sort of directions to the BBC about what its output should be. We all as citizens have views on the programmes it produces, which are good, which are bad, whether we think it should do more in one direction or more in another. But those are views we are entitled to hold as citizens and to debate fully, but I don't think it's one that politicians should get involved in when they're wearing their politician's hat.